everyone, and welcome back to another episode of This Week in Throws. It has been a while, and I apologize for that. Coming off of Ramona, we had a couple home meets here in Gainesville. I graduated from the University of Florida a few weeks ago, so it's been a pretty chaotic month and a half or so since the last time I was able to do one of these videos, but kind of unfortunately for me in that sense, it has been far from a slow start to the outdoor season. On the pro and the collegiate levels, there has just been some absolutely incredible stuff going on. I mean, even the high school level too. I think you've got 4 guys throwing over, I think 219 feet is the mark in the boys discus this year in the US, led by Simon Rosselli, who's also a 65-foot shot putter now. So there's incredible stuff happening at all levels. And I just want to preface this for those of you, if there is anyone that comes into these videos blissfully unaware of looking at the timeline and seeing how long this video is about to be, I apologize in advance because this one is going to be a doozy. I have nearly 3 full pages of notes to get through. So we're going to get through it together. We're going to be starting with the pro action that we've seen going on to start the outdoor season, and then wrapping it up with some collegiate talk and a little bit of a preview because we finally have the Diamond League returning this week on Saturday morning here in the US. Saturday morning, we'll see the first Diamond League happening over in Shanghai, China, and we got really good women's shot and men's disc field. So we'll break that down towards the end of the episode, but it's good to be back. It's good to be rambling again. And let's get into some more productive rambling because we have plenty of throws to talk about. In the professional ranks, we'll start in the hammer, and both hammers have already been incredible. I've done facts of the day about both of these stats, but the men's hammer, we've already seen 6 men go over 80 meters, which is the earliest in the season we've ever seen that number, or at least since 2001, I think. And then in the women's hammer, we've already seen 12 women go over 75 meters, which is the most, tied for the most in the history of the world with the 2025 season last year, but there's some really big name candidates that haven't quite found a big one yet, or they just haven't opened their season in some cases. Silja Kosonen and Kristen Turvo, almost 78-meter throwers last year. Janae Kasnavoid, one of the best in world history, and Anita Wlodarczyk, the world record holder, have not yet joined that 75-meter club this year. So there's definitely room for that group to keep expanding and the greatest year in the history of women's hammer to continue to develop. Starting with the men for a bit of a deeper dive, though, the top competition of the year so far, the Kip Keino Classic out in Nairobi, where we saw Ethan Katzberg, the world and Olympic champion, world champion 2 times over, open his outdoor season going 82. I say outdoor season as if Ethan threw weight indoors. He just opened his season 82.43 for his opener, a world lead, but that mark, 82.43, is pretty in line with where he's been the last couple years at this point in the season, but this series was one of the best in his career because he hit 82.43, and then he had 2 more throws in the series over 82 meters and 2 more over 81 meters. So his worst throw of the series was, I think, 79.05 on round 1, so his first throw of the entire season. And then he didn't throw worse than 81 meters in the following 5 rounds. He's back. It's pretty incredible, especially because last year, it felt like a little bit of a slower start. I mean, it was going to be a slower start than 2024 because that year he opened up, or I think Kip Keino might have been his second meet that year, but late April, early May, he throws 84 meters and immediately is just like, oh my God, what is this guy on? I should not say that. I do not think Ethan Katzberg is on anything other than being really good at hammer. But it's like that mark just kind of sent shockwaves throughout the world, just solidifying that what he did in Budapest was no fluke. And so this isn't that big, but this consistency, especially compared to last year, where we saw how he ended his season, going 84-75 or whatever he threw in Tokyo. And men's hammer, thankfully, is one of the 3 throwing events that does have a global championship this year at the World Ultimate Championships, which will be held in Budapest in the late stages of this summer and the early fall. So Ethan's got something to peak for, and this is just an absolutely incredible series he had down in Nairobi. So I don't know how you can be anything other than ridiculously excited for what 2026 is going to bring for the young GOAT. He beat Mihailo Kokon in that one, but Mihailo went 81-26, which in his opener, not his opener, because he threw at the European Throws Cup in March, but 81-26 is the third best mark of his career in early May, or late April. I forget exactly which week Kip Keino was, but yeah, that's another really strong mark from Mihailo. And like, he was the unfortunate one last year in Tokyo who threw 82 meters and didn't land on the podium, because Ethan, Merlin Hummel, and Ben Salash just so happened to throw farther over 82 meters. But Mihailo, like, it's crazy to think about how young he still is, because he's been on the scene for such a long time. Like, he was competing in Doha, almost won a medal there when I think he was 19. So he's still really young. He's still getting better, and that is a very encouraging early season mark. Speaking of guys that are young and getting better, Armin Jabados a few weeks ago went 80-95, and he is 20 years old. He turned 20 in mid-January. So he's like 20 years old in 3.5 months, and he's almost throwing 81 meters. That's scary stuff. I mean, last year we saw him finish in the top 8 of the deepest or the best, highest top end of a world championships we've ever seen. We saw him finish in the top 8 there as a 19-year-old. You know, we saw the incredible things he was doing with the 6 kilo hammer. We saw what he was doing with the 7.26 kilo hammer as a U20. He's the 3rd best junior athlete with the senior weight ever. And so, like, it's not surprising that he's now, like, this has got to be one of, if not the youngest athletes to ever throw 80 meters. Like, the world junior record with the senior weight is 78-33. And, like, you know, you just have to feel with that, like, there's probably not a ton of guys who have gone up 1.7 meters at the bare minimum in the span of like less than a year. So I don't know, that it's an impossible. I feel like it's probably an impossible stat, or not impossible. It would just take a really long time to track down whether or not Armin actually is the youngest man to ever throw 80 meters. But regardless of if he is or not, regardless of like the absolution of that statement, 80-95 a few months after he turns 20 is just so insane. And I talked about it so much last year, but like, the men's hammer right now is in such a good spot. And of the like top guys, like Rudy Winkler, who opened his season at 80, what did he throw? 80-60 at the USATF Winter Long Throws Nationals at the end of March, which is his best opener by over a meter for a guy that threw 83 meters last year. So that's exciting for Rudy. But among the like top guys in the hammer right now, I mean, obviously you have Nowitzki and Fidek from Poland, but it kind of seems like there's a changing of the guard going on, and they're kind of starting to phase out. But of the guys that were really hyper competitive last year, Rudy is really the only one that's over 30. I mean, Ethan turned 24 a couple weeks ago. Merlin Hummel is a few months older than Ethan. Ben Salash, I think, is 28, maybe. Armin Jabados is 20. Like, the top guys in the world are all young and hyper competitive. Mihailo Kokon is, I think, 25 or 26 now. So these guys are, for some of these guys, they're still a few years away from reaching their prime, especially when you talk about Armin Jabados. And so it's just so amazingly terrifying to think about what could the state of the men's hammer look like when we get to LA in 2.5 years? What could it look like when we're down in Brisbane in 2032? Or maybe I should just stop saying that because we obviously care about more than the Olympics. So like once these guys start fully hitting their like mid to late 20s and hitting their real physical kind of strength primes for throwers, and I mean, they're just going to be getting more and more technically sound as time goes on and they get more experience and more reps, especially in higher competitive situations. Like it's going to be pretty insane stuff. I'm very excited. One of the kind of under the radar really strong performances from the early part of this season, Volodymyr Myslivchuk, who represents Czechia. He repatriated from Ukraine in early 2024, I believe. He threw 80-69 at the aforementioned European Throws Cup back in mid-March and beat a really strong field. Ben Salash was in that field. He beat him by, I think, 3 centimeters. You also had Mihailo Kokon. You had, who else did I write down that was in that field? Jan Chassenond, a French thrower who's thrown over 81 meters multiple times. So it is early season. Like mid-March is really early. I don't know what exactly you can take away from that in terms of him beating them. You can still take away that throwing 80-69 in mid-March is really far. And that's a 2.5 meter PB for Volodymyr. And he's started his season. He's competed 3 times now. And both of his other 2 comps have been 77 mid to high, I believe is where he's been landing at. So that mark, the 80-69, is still definitely a standout when compared to his career as a whole and his form this season. But it's really showing that he has just elevated. And it's kind of interesting because he's 30, which, you know, like I've said, you know, can be nearing the strength and physical primes of some of these throwers. But just because that's the case, it doesn't necessarily mean you see a breakout when you get here. Usually it's the really good guys just kind of continue elevating. And I mean, Volodymyr's been strong for a couple years, but like I think the Paris Olympics were his first global championship, and then he didn't make it out of the qualifying round there. Threw well in the qualifying round at Tokyo last year, but didn't make the final. And now has just come out of the gates in 2026 absolutely swinging. And this is a great year that he can kind of make a mark because he doesn't just have the World Ultimate Championships. He also has a European Championships. And that one, slightly easier podium to make without the likes of Rudy Winkler and Ethan Katzberg there to kind of contend for those spots. So, I mean, it's easy is a matter of perspective because you still have Ben Salash, Narmin Zabatos, and Merlin Hummel and Mihailo Kokon to contend with. But he's got 2 opportunities to really kind of continue to make a name for himself. And I'm just curious what picking up that win, like opening your season with a massive PB, beating the guys you beat, is really, really impressive stuff. And so I'm curious to see how he can kind of continue carrying that into bigger meets as the season progresses. But regardless, massive kudos to you, Volodymyr. Ben Salash has competed twice this year, over 80 meters in both competitions. Rudy Winkler opened his season at 80-60, like I said, and then through, I think, 78 mid at Drake relays. So Rudy's in strong early season form. And Rudy kind of leads me into a greater discussion about the U.S. as a whole right now because it is, what day am I recording this? May 12th. On May 12th, the United States of America has 7 men over 77 meters in the men's hammer throw. That's crazy. Like the U.S., we sent 2 guys to the Paris Olympics because we couldn't get a third qualified through world rankings in the men's hammer. And Rudy Winkler and Daniel Haar were the only 2 that got the world standard. Not even 2 years later, and we've got 7 guys throwing 77 meters. Rudy Winkler, over 80, like I said already. Trey Knight has opened his season with an absolute bang. He went 79.33 to set a PB. Kieran McKeague is at 77.92. Alex Young threw 77.37, which was his best mark in about 4 years. And then we've also got Texas Tanner and Tara Robinson O'Hagan and Ryan Johnson, who we'll talk about when I get to the collegiate section in a little bit. And so that's 7 guys over 77, and it's not including guys that have gone over 77, like Daniel Haw, who's thrown over 80 meters in his career, multiple-time U.S. champion. Tyler Williams, who threw 78.30 last year. Tanner Berg, I believe last year he threw 76.93. So he's right in that range of really like any PB gets him over that barrier. And yes, like 77 is kind of an arbitrary number. I forget exactly what the standard was for Tokyo, but regardless, like that's a really competitive mark that most years, if you can perform that well in a qualifying round at Worlds, should get you into the final. And so it's really kind of it's a solid like high water mark of just taking a temperature check of where American men's hammer throw is right now. It's not quite as internationally competitive as the women are right now, which we'll talk about the women in a bit. But it's still such a good sign to see that improvement. And like I said, like if you would have said this was the case 2 years ago, as I'm sitting here crunching numbers to see if Justin Stafford or Jordan Geist, which Justin Stafford, if he gets back healthy, he's thrown 77 meters before, so he's another name to add into that pool. But I was like crunching numbers to see which one of them could get enough ranking points to go to Paris, and it ended up being neither of them. And so we didn't even send a full team to the Olympics. Like if you would have told that, Paul, that this is where we would be in 20 or so months, it's incredible stuff. And it's really a testament to the guys that have managed to step up and just kind of ride this wave of hammer success all throughout the world right now and really bring it to the forefront in the U.S. as well. So a big hat tip to all the boys. Women's hammer, Cameron Rogers, I did an interview with her before Ramona after she opened her season at 81.13, which is the 4th best mark in world history, solidifies her as the 2nd best woman ever. And she's competed 3 times this year. 81.13 in Austin at Texas Relays, 79.63 on a rain delay, kind of cold, wet night in Ramona, and then 80.03 with a pretty good series to back it up in Kenya at the Kip Keino Classic. So Cameron Rogers is simply having the best start to a season we've ever seen in the women's hammer throw. I think Anita the earliest Anita had ever thrown 80 meters, I think was like late June. Brooke Anderson threw 80 meters in mid-May in 2022, I believe. But I mean, Cameron's already broken 80 twice and thrown 81 before the calendar even flips to May. So I'm just so curious about like how much of that massive PB in Tokyo was really just kind of a mental breakthrough for Cameron, I guess, because, she'd obviously kept winning things. Like she won Budapest, she won in Paris, but her PB was kind of stagnant from earlier in 2023. She gets a mini PB at last year by like 20 centimeters or something, up to 78.88. And then just explodes in Tokyo. And now she's carried that momentum so seamlessly across a full off season into the very early stages of this season. And it's continuing to solidify her as potentially, by the end of her career, we're calling her the greatest hammer thrower of all time over Anita, which it's always going to be tough to like compare eras because, she's like walking in Anita's footsteps. Like without Anita, who knows where this current generation of women's hammer throwers are. So it's like tough to say that exactly. And with the competitiveness around the world right now, like it might be a little more difficult to rack up the titles the way that Anita has, but Cameron is clearly showing that's not an issue for her. So I'll leave the GOAT debates for like another decade down the line. Cameron turns 27 this summer, so she's got some time to keep building that resume before we get there. But regardless, it's just super exciting to see the start to Cameron season and what it could mean for this year and the future further ahead. Brooke Anderson, 78.56 at Drake Relays a few weeks ago for her. Pretty typical early season Brooke Anderson form. She's always throwing like 78, 79, even like I said, having an 80 in I think 2022 in this kind of early stages of the season. So not really a ton to take away from that other than Brooke is healthy, Brooke is in good shape, and Brooke probably wasn't happy about getting passed on the world all-time list in Tokyo. So hopefully we see. I really hope that the same way we've seen the men kind of come up and challenge Ethan, and we saw Ethan take a few losses last year. Like, I hope what Cameron does in Tokyo, or what Cameron did in Tokyo, really kind of continues to motivate and rejuvenate some rivalry. You know, sometimes I think the women's hammer throwers might just be a little too friendly. We really need to start seeing some beef. And so maybe that's what I'll start trying to sow. I'll start trying to instigate things. But yeah, I mean, regardless, Brooke is throwing really well, as she always does. So encouraging to see. Rachel Richardson, talk about a start to the season for her. It was going to be tough to match opening at 78.80 last year in Ramona. But Rachel, 76.86 to win the U.S. quote-unquote national title at the Winter Long Throws Nationals. And then 78.30, finished runner-up behind Cameron Rogers in Ramona. And then 76.99 at Drake. I'm pretty sure that's where she was last. Yeah. So for Rachel, that consistency is a very, very exciting thing because, you know, she hasn't PB'd yet. Her PB is still 78.80 from Ramona last year, but she was close to that when she returned to Ramona. And across all of 2025, I think she had 3 comps, like over 76 meters or something like that. And now she's gone 3 for 3 to start this year. And the fouls within those comps have been way cut down. So it's not necessarily like something we saw from her, I think at or at USA's, where like she gets a good mark in round 1 or 2, but then she ends up with like 4 or 5 fouls on her scorecard. That's not been the situation for Rachel this year. And that was really the thing holding her back last year from truly being one of the top contenders in the world. And then, you know, when she gets to Tokyo, it's maybe just a little inexperience on that world stage that got to her a little bit. But this year really sucks that women's hammer is not in the World Ultimate Championships, but we move on. But yeah, for Rachel this year, like this consistency is what we wanted to see all of last year. And so the fact that she isn't like taking time to find it this year and she's just stepping right into it and being like, this is the kind of thrower I am this year. This is how I'm going to continue progressing, continue getting better, continue building my legacy. Unbelievably exciting to see. And I am so back to using exciting every other sentence. So the Paulie Throws drinking game of taking a shot every time I say the word exciting is back on. The Chinese duo of Zhao Ji and Zhang Jiali, they're doing their thing this year. Zhao, 78.22 is the season's best and a personal best and an Asian record for her. And Zhang Jiali threw 77.13, which is a season's best for her. They both threw those big marks at home meets back in China. But the really cool thing is they've been on a bit of a U.S. tour the last few weeks. They both competed at the Drake Relays, and then they competed at another smaller meet down in California, which is really cool because it feels like you don't often see the Chinese throwers really come over to the U.S. and compete if it's not pre. And so the fact that they're coming over here and just continuing to throw really well. The tour hasn't been as kind to Zhao, but Zhang has gone 75 high twice in both of her competitions here in the U.S. So she's really not having any issues with big international travel and just continuing to drop bombs. But it's cool to see for the growth of the sport, them just kind of branch out and continue to build their international profile, because obviously they're the world silver and bronze medalists. Like, people want to watch them throw. And so it's cool that they are, I mean, I don't know if it's their decision or if it's like the Chinese Federation's decision or how exactly that works, but it's cool that they are allowing their competitions to be a little more accessible to throws fans around the world, rather than just like either A, the few diamond leagues that Hammer gets in, or B, like you have to travel to some military base in China. Or I think that was like the meet they both threw 78 and 77 at was called like something military base competition or something like that. But yeah, it's cool that they're getting out and competing, especially here in the US a little bit more, because I'll always be biased about that. Erin Reese, let's talk about it. 76. A couple days ago, a big PB for her, 2.5 meters onto a PB she had already thrown this season, and that was a PB by like a meter. So last year, I think her PB was, or coming into the season, her PB was sitting at around 73 mid, and now it's up to 76. She's entered the top 25 women in history, which doesn't even crack the top 5 Americans in world history, which is kind of insane. But for Erin, like, it's really good to see this. I mean, obviously she's an Olympian, made that team in Paris, and for that comp, like, she needed some things to go wrong for some other people to get onto that team, with Brooke and Janae having really tough days at trials. But she really kind of, this mark asserts herself as, it's 2 years down the line, so I don't know how valid this connection is, but like, she is clearly one of the best in the world now. Obviously, you make an Olympian, you make a US team in this event, you're clearly one of the best the world has to offer. But this mark is really just taking that to a new level. And so that's really, really cool to see for Erin. So big congrats to her. Another PB for an American Olympian, Anthonett Chickenwoke, through 75.51 at the Drake Relays. And it's only a 2-centimeter PB for Annette. It's like, she now has she's very consistent. The 4 best throws of her career have come in 4 different years, and they sit at 75.47, 75.48, 75.49, and 75.51. So those are really far throws. She's an Olympic silver medalist. Obviously, she can throw really far. But I wonder for Annette, I wonder if that's frustrating. Like, you've been throwing really well, but you've just been adding little bits and pieces onto this PB. And like, there's got to be something bigger there just bubbling under the surface. But like, throwing this PB in late April, I think is a really good sign that, especially after a tougher year for Annette last year, that she's just ready to come into this season, really grab the bull by the horns. And maybe she will get that big one. I mean, we saw Erin get her big one. We saw Rachel get her big one last year. Obviously, Brooke and Deanna are a little more, and Janae are a little more consistent in those really deep marks historically. But for Annette, like, I hope 75.51 isn't the only PB she throws this year, let's say. But, she's an Olympic silver medalist. Throwing a PB is hard. So regardless, I hope I'm not making a 2-centimeter PB sound like it's not a big deal. Because it's a big deal, especially this early in the season, and it's very exciting for Annette. We are already nearing the half-hour mark just on professional hammer. Thankfully, there hasn't been as much going on in the other events professionally, outside of Ramona for the discus, which, I have plenty of action talking about those marks. If you want to go find those, I'll link them down below. But some recent discus updates. Erica Beistel is going absolutely insane at home meets in Allendale, Michigan at Grand Valley State. And technically home meets for her, but she's not competing collegiately there anymore. But she does still train up at Grand Valley, I believe. But she's gotten 66.34, 65.57, and 66.72. And I mean, it's a great facility. Like, that's where Alex Rose's PB is from. I don't know exactly what the wind is like up there, but it's not necessarily a stadium. But I mean, regardless of whatever conditions she's throwing in, those are really, really strong marks, especially to be doing them consistently this early in the season. It makes me sad there's not a team for her to make this year, because it definitely seems like this year would be, I mean, she's already someone who finished fourth place at Olympic trials, but it definitely seems like this year would be a year where she'd be in really, really strong contention for that. But regardless of the goals or where she could end up or whatever, like, there'll still be a U.S. championships. There's still a U.S. podium to make. There's still prize money to get. And Erica is setting herself up very nicely to have a very strong first rookie season as a pro. Samantha Hall went 66.39 in Ramona, which is the second best mark in Jamaican history behind only Shade Lawrence. And then she comes back in Kingston a few weeks ago and goes 64 meters on the dot, which is her best ever mark outside of Ramona. So congratulations to you, Samantha. On the men's side, the same weekend, or not the same weekend, but a few days after Ramona wrapped up, where he saw Steven Richter go 74 meters and Marius Kargas go 69 mid, Henrik Jansson answered pretty well into a Brandenburg. Absolutely butchered that name. The site of the women's world record and formerly the men's world record held by recent birthday boy Jürgen Schult. He went 67.78 in one of his first competitions of the season. So he's clearly in shape. And for the German team at European Championships, I talked with Steven Richter and Marius Kargas about this in Ramona. And so they have 3 spots, and it's top 2 at German Championships, and then one discretionary spot. And I was hyping this up all season last year about just how difficult that team is going to be to make and how exciting German Championships are going to be because of it. And it's really the same case this year. I mean, I don't believe we've seen Mika Sosna compete yet. So I'm wondering what Mika's got going on. But Marius, Steven, Henrik, Clemens Prüfer. I think I saw something that Clemens Prüfer is out for the season. I think he had surgery on something. I'll double check that. So I guess that kind of opens up a spot. But still, those German championships, it's gonna be a fun one to keep track of. And I said it last year, like, these guys compete once the season really gets rolling into the summer. It feels like they're all competing against each other, like every week at a minimum. So we'll get a pretty good kind of idea of we'll get a lot of data points at least for how those German championships could play out. So I'm excited to keep track of that. Brian Williams is back after taking all of 2025 off. In his first competition since the 2024 Olympic trials a few weeks ago down in Long Beach, California, he goes 67.45, which is a meter plus PB, which returning to competition after a full year off and throwing a meter further than you ever have in your life, pretty incredible stuff, and very happy to see B-Dub back in the U.S. men's discus picture is quite messy right now because it is quite deep. And there's a lot of guys fighting for not a lot of spots when we talk about a team to make in 2027. And clearly Brian, he took 25 off. He was sitting back. He was watching, and he wants to be a big part of it again in the future. So exciting to see Brian back. Another guy that's back, Lucas Weisheidinger, opened his season at 67 meters on May 9th in Austria, which is his best opener since 2023. So exciting to see, even as he's, I think, 34 now, Lucas is still showing he's not going anywhere. So good stuff out of you, Lucas Weisheidinger. Men's javelin has been not super deep or not the craziest event, but there's been a couple really standout performances. Obviously, chief among them, Ramesh Thuranga Patharaj out of Sri Lanka has gone 89.37 and 89.28 in his last 2 competitions, which is almost 3 full meters ahead of now the 3rd best competition of his career. And he had that big 89 a few weeks ago. And, sometimes we see, especially in javelin, it feels like we see those really big kind of outlier PBs and then maybe not necessarily mark super close to them in the future. And then he comes right back out and does the exact same thing in his next competition. So another South Asian name added into the men's javelin field when you look at Neeraj Chopra and Arshad Nadeem, obviously multiple-time world medalists, Olympic champions, both of them. Now you've got Ramesh throwing 89 meters. You've got Sachin Yadav, who's opened his season really well for India. It's really become, that region has become such a hotbed of javelin talent right now, and it's so cool to see them kind of just continually pump out these really, really excellent throwers. And men's javelin is an event that has a global championship this year, and I'll double check this and edit it out if I sound stupid, but I think that Sri Lanka also competes in the Commonwealth Games, which means the Commonwealth men's javelin could also be pretty incredible if like all of the South Asian countries that I just listed send people to the Com Games. So we could see two really, really exciting international javelin championships this year. And obviously Europeans is going to be incredible as well. So yeah, but regardless of all of that kind of bigger circumstances or implications of these marks, the biggest thing is just a huge congrats to Ramesh for such an incredible start to his season. Curtis Thompson, the world bronze medalist, has also had a really good start to his season, 85.33 at Ramona and 84.63 at Drake. We don't need to talk about what happened at the USATF Winter Long Throws Nationals. And Curtis was a guy that for a couple years, like he'd have the one really big performance. Like it was at Texas Relays last year. A couple years before, he had thrown 87 meters, but it wasn't quite finding a way to match that or have some sort of consistency. But then last year, you saw him win USAs at 84 meters. And then I think he had another comp between USAs and NACACs where he threw like 82 something maybe. I might be completely making that up. And then at NACACs, he wins at 87 meters. And then he obviously wins a bronze medal at Worlds throwing 86 high. So he's found that consistency at the start of last season, and he's really kind of continued to build that in to the start of his 2026 campaign. And those are two of, I think, the top 10 best marks of his career. And for him to be doing that this early in the season, amazing stuff from Curtis. But on the U.S. scene, he's not going uncontested anymore, because let me talk to you about my guy, friend of the channel, Mark Minicello, 84.11 for Mark at Drake Relays. And Mark had beat Curtis at the USATF Winter Long Throws Nationals, which, like I said, in terms of Curtis, we won't speak of that. In terms of Mark, yeah, he won a national title. Let's talk about it. Not a crazy mark for him to win that one, but clearly not good conditions, clearly people not in perfect competitive shape yet. And so there's some grit and some good competitive stuff you can take away from Mark for being able to pull that one out down in Tucson. But at Drake, he goes 84.11, big PB for him. And this comp, it's now the first year we've ever seen two American men over 84 meters with the new model of the Javelin in the same season. And it's definitely the first time we've ever seen two American men go 84 meters with the new model in the same competition, which is what we saw in Drake. Mark was a two-time NCAA champion for Penn and Georgia, so that comes with the expectation of building into a really strong pro career. And so like a good rookie season for him last year, but now it's very encouraging to see him really take the reins of this in his sophomore season as a pro and build on this and continue working with Don Babbitt down in Athens and start to produce some really good marks. Like 84 meters is a internationally competitive mark now, much more so than I think 82.60 was, which was around where his former PB was. And still, he threw that in late April. So lots more for Mark to go. And I think a really good kind of goal for Mark this year, if he can get into the World Ultimate Championships, that's going to be really cool. If we can send two guys there, that's going to be absolutely sick. So I'm really hoping Mark can kind of continue this form into the rest of the 2026 season. Now we flip the notebook over because we are finally one page down about 40 minutes in. Let's go. A comeback story in the men's javelin that we saw this year. Thomas Roller might be back. The 2016 Olympic champion from Rio opened his season at the Kip Keino Classic and went 83.33, which is his best mark since July of 2019. And it's not like he hasn't been competing in recent years. He's at least competed more than Johannes Vetter has. Johannes, we still miss you. But the marks just haven't been there, and I think the health hasn't quite been there either. But he's opening his season with his best mark in 7 years. That's going to be a good sign. It's still, far from his 93 meter PB. I forget exactly where Thomas is on the all-time list. So it's not quite there yet. But it's such an unbelievable step in the right direction for a season where he's another one. He has 2 championships to train for and to set as goals with Europeans and World Ultimates. And so it's super exciting to see Thomas back in this form, especially considering just the status of thrower he is. Like, this is an Olympic champion now 10 years on from winning that Olympic title, back to throwing really competitive marks. So that's always going to be really cool to see. In the women's javelin throw, a little bit less has been going on, but that could start to change this weekend. I believe on Sunday at the Seiko Golden Grand Prix in Tokyo, there's an incredible field, it looks like. I think you've got Haruka Kitaguchi and Alina Jenko and Adriana Vilagos and Flor Denise Ruiz Hurtado. Like, so many of the best women in the world are going to be in Tokyo. Ulysses Angulo, the world champ, is going to be there. So there have been, like, a lot of people have opened their season. I believe Vilagos, Jenko have already opened their season and just didn't throw super well in their opener because it might have been at the European Throws Cup in mid-March, so can't really blame them for that. But I think this weekend could really be where we start to see that pick up. The people who have made the most of their season already, Madison Wiltrout is your world leader, which is an absolutely amazing sentence to say. 63.74 for her at Drake, which is 2.5 meters onto her PB that she had thrown just a few weeks earlier at the USATF Winter Long Throws Nationals. Incredible early season form from Madison. And I was able to talk with her in Ramona, and it was just cool to kind of get her perspective on how it's really been kind of like a mental shift this season that's helped to unlock some new things for her on the runway. And clearly, when I talked to her, she had already PB'd this year and then had one of the best marks of her career in Ramona. And then 2 weeks later, she furthers that and creates even more progress for herself. So exciting stuff for Madison, and I can't wait to see what the rest of her season looks like. I think for her, I mean, if she's throwing almost 64 meters now, like, I think World Ultimates is going to be kind of a lock for her, I hope. But I mean, if she can finish in the top 8 there, like at a global championship, like, that would be a really, really successful season that I think not a lot of people would have seen coming if you would have asked me in January or February. Liana Davidson has also been throwing really well this year, 62.54 for her 2 weeks ago in Athens, Georgia, on May 2nd. And she's had some really strong marks as well, 59 mid and 58 mid early on in her season. And, for Liana, we saw her start last season with an absolute bang, going over 63 meters in, I think, April. It might have even been in late March at Georgia Tech. But now she's a pro. She can kind of take her time a little bit, and she doesn't have to do this. She doesn't have to build into the NCAA postseason that's starting with conference and then regionals and then nationals and just 3 really high pressure meets in the span of 4 weeks. So she can take her time with that, because we saw injuries kind of start to wear her down, especially if she was wearing a knee brace, or it was either a knee or an elbow brace. I forget which one. Some sort of joint brace by the time that she got to Tokyo for her first global championship, and still threw pretty well, all things considering. So for Liana, it's very good to see she's really kind of seamlessly stepped into this pro life. She also like myself, just graduated, except hers was, I believe, with a master's degree from Georgia. So now she gets homework off her plate, which should be pretty good for her as well. Men's and women's shot put to close out this pro section. Kind of slim pickings so far outdoors. The highlight is definitely an incredible men's comp at the Drake Relays, where Roger Steen threw 21.93 for the win, followed by Chuck Anakwechi at 21.74 and Rajendra Campbell at 21.72. With Rajendra, before we move on, I think it's worth noting that a few weeks ago, his and Roger Stona's, as well as a bunch of other athletes, their transfer of allegiance to Turkey was shut down by World Athletics, which really sucks because, I don't know, you can say what you want about, like, basically, like, pay for play, kind of, where Turkey is just paying to get these athletes, and it's like free agency, but also from the testimony of several athletes, like JAAA just simply does not treat their field eventers well, particularly their throwers, even if they're Olympic medalists and Olympic champions, like Roger Stona and Rajendra Campbell. So I think they're completely justified in taking an opportunity to secure some financial stability. And so it sucks that, like, I understand the reasoning why World Athletics kind of had to shut it down. And I'm not exactly sure where we go from here. But it just kind of all around unfortunate for both of those guys. But they're landing on their feet. They're throwing well this year. Rajendra 21.72 is a strong mark. And Roger Steen, that 21.93 backed up a 21.77, which he threw in Ramona. And then it's also worth mentioning that in the World Shot Put series a few days before that at Drake, he threw 73 feet, which I think is 22.20, somewhere in that range, which is about 10 centimeters ahead of his PB in an official competition. That's the same thing that he did at the WSPS at Drake last year, threw 73, well beyond his official PB. And I mean, I think I pitched the idea to him at the WSPS in South Carolina that, like, we've got to start just making these, like, official shot comps, like 12 throws long, because clearly the guys get better, or at least Roger gets better the deeper he goes into the competition. WSPS is still just so much fun, even with a slightly kind of trimmed down field. I think there were only 6 guys maybe in the pro section at Drake for the WSPS, but regardless, it is still a great viewing experience, even remotely. So huge kudos to Ryan for that, as always, and huge kudos to Roger for some really big throws. Another big throw from the men's side, world indoor silver medalist Jordan Geist opened his outdoor season at 21.81 at a small meet in Ashland, and that was only a 3-throw series. So if he would have had a full 6 throws that day, who knows where he would have ended up. But regardless, 21.81 as an opener, I think anyone would take that any day of the week. On the women's side, Chase Jackson opened her outdoor season in Ramona, throwing 20.13, and for the world indoor champion, that's a pretty dang good opener. I mean, a lot of the top women have opened their seasons already, and that is the only throw over 20 meters outdoors we've seen, especially considering, I talked to Chase after, and I think she said it was like a couple days before the competition that she decided she was going to fly down to Ramona and compete. So she made a good decision, and she made the most out of probably not a perfect kind of lead-in to the meet. And it just shows once again that she's ready to attack this season, which I'm still salty about her telling me in Tokyo that she was like, you probably won't see me next year. And then she comes out and wins a world title and is throwing over 20 meters in early April. But that's just what Chase is going to do. Chase is just going to troll me in particular and make me look stupid. So enjoy that, Chase, because we will continue to enjoy your very far throws. Axelina Johansson, who we'll talk about in a minute, she's the second best outdoors this year with a mark of 19.62. But Daniil Thomas Dodd has also been throwing really well. 1934 and 1912 for her in 2 competitions this outdoor season. So the first Diamond League women's shot put is in the Shanghai Diamond League on Saturday morning. So I think that's really going to kind of start to kick everything off and really get the ball or the shot rolling with some huge marks. I mean, that's basically a global final in that field, as it is most Diamond Leagues. So excited to see what plays out on Saturday. But regardless, we've seen, all things considered, some solid marks for April and early May. I've switched hands with the mic because my arm is starting to get tired. So hopefully we can run through this NCAA stuff pretty quickly. We'll start with the shot put. And on both the men's and women's side, it's just complete and utter domination by the national champions. Indoors, on the men's side, Tarek Robinson O'Hagan has competed 5 times. And those 5 performances are the 5 best outdoor performances in the country this year. Unsurprisingly, because that's just what Tarek does. And including the indoor season as well, Tarek has competed 11 times, and those make up 11 of the 15 best performances in the entire NCAA. Tarek is just ridiculously dominant. I think his outdoor national lead right now is 2086, I think. So by his standards, still probably not where he wants to be, and he's still probably a little pissed. But we'll see what he does at chasing his 8 billionth SEC title this weekend, which I will be there for. I'm driving up to Auburn Thursday morning for the SEC championships. Should be some pretty fun comps in basically every event. So stay tuned for coverage live from Auburn. Well, probably not live, but on the ground in Auburn, I should say. But yeah, Tarek is incredible. Axelina is incredible. Like I said, she's thrown 1962. She's only competed twice this outdoor season, in 1962, and then she threw 1910, I think 2 weekends ago, down in Arizona. She has, including the indoor season, including World Indoors, she has 7 of the 9 best performances in the country this season in her 7 competitions. So for both of them, they're just really, really good. And it would probably take a really bad day for either one of them for anyone else to win a national title. And so we'll see what they do at a championship meet this weekend at Big Tens, which I have no idea where Big Tens are, and SECs at Auburn. Acoma Odaluga on the women's side, though, given Axelina a little bit of a challenge if she has a bad day, and Acoma has a really good day. 1923 for Acoma at Virginia, which is one of the best marks in NCAA history. Megan Haig out of Auburn has continued her strong form from the indoor season. She's gone 1863 and 1822. And Penn's star freshman Jessica Oji, 1831, 1815, and 1810 on her docket this year. And that 1831 against a really tough field that featured Megan Haig and Kelsey Morel-Ross from Georgia and SEC champion from last year, Nina Nabwe. I still don't know how to pronounce your name, Nina, and I'm deeply apologetic about that. Jess, the youngest in the field, goes 1831 in round 6 on her final throw to finish as the top collegian there. So between those 3, like, Acoma's probably got to step up, especially if she continues to show that 19 plus. Like, that's a form that only Axelina can touch regarding any big breakout, or barring any big breakouts, I should say, which is kind of a stupid thing to do in this sport. So I'm not going to bar anyone from having a big breakout. But regardless, like, it's probably going to be Axelina and then a chase for the other kind of medals, even though podiums at NCAAs are top 8, which is whatever. But I mean, that battle kind of behind Axelina is going to be, I think, pretty exciting to watch. And I would not be surprised if we see something absolutely huge out of Jessica Oji to really respond to some bigger marks from either Megan or Acoma, or maybe we see Alita Van Dalen get in the mix, who opened her season at I think her outdoor season, I should say, at 17 mid a week and a half ago in Jacksonville. Um, Jess has got that dog in her, so I wouldn't be surprised if she answers whatever she has to, except for Axelina, because that might be a bit too much to ask. On the men's side, Ben Smith from Oregon, the redshirt freshman, he's so good. 2039, I think. I'm pretty sure that was just 2 weekends ago down in Arizona. Or no, that was at the Oregon team invite, which was like 3 weeks ago. Incredible mark for him. Cade Moran, it's a lot of the same guys that we saw indoors. Kobe Lawrence is throwing well. Cade Moran is at 2021 out of Nebraska. But a new addition to the mix, Henku Lamberts from Nebraska, a 19-year-old freshman from South Africa. He went 2018 a couple weeks ago. And this is a guy that did not crack 19 meters indoors. He was throwing like 1880, which is a really strong mark, but nationally kind of a non-factor. And then, but this season, like, it's not like that 20 is a outlier, because he's also thrown like 1975 and 1980 and 1990 mid or something. So the 2018, yes, 2018 is obviously the best mark by a pretty significant margin, because that's sometimes how PBs work. But it's not like he's going to go out there and get to nationals. And okay, well, getting to nationals can be hard, especially for a freshman, because regionals can be messy. But if he's there, like, I don't think it's going to be a situation where he throws 20 once in his career and then he goes to nationals and puts out a dud and throws 17 meters or whatever. Like, he's had the breakout, but he's also had really strong consistency this year, which usually is a pretty good formula. And Justin St. Clair continues to be absolute magician. We get to discus now, and we finally get our first Texas Tanner mention. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but he threw 69.56 in Ramona a few weeks ago. For some reason, USTFCCCA is not recognizing that as a collegiate mark, even though he was competing collegiately there. So it does not have him as the second best thrower in NCAA history, which he rightfully should be. But with his 66.30, which he backed that up with down in Long Beach a few weeks ago, he is still the collegiate leader this season, according to USTFCCCA. Texas is so good. And I'm just, like, when I saw what he threw in Long Beach, Long Beach still isn't a stadium. I don't know exactly what conditions are like there. Kind of the same thing I was saying about Erica Beistel up in Grand Valley. But, like, when I saw Texas throw 66, it was like such a sigh of relief, because I was like, Ramona deniers can shut up a little bit, because, 3 meters is still quite a gulf, but it's showing at least that it's a pretty normal progression, that yes, you can throw further in good conditions, and also you can still throw really far in not the perfect storm of conditions that is Ramona. And Texas also threw, I think, 64, what do I have here? 92 at Long Beach, like 2 days after he threw 66. So he's such a legitimate contender. It's not even funny. He's also thrown over 19 meters in the shot this outdoor season. He's still kind of chasing that 20-meter mark that he managed at NCAA Indoors, but he's a proven championship competitor. He's got 3 more opportunities to throw shot really well this season, or at least this collegiate season, and I would not be surprised at all if he takes full advantage of that. Ralford Mullings has had a very steady season, just getting better meet after meet through 3 meets so far. And his best mark at the moment sits at 65.97 from the Sooner invite on May 2nd. And, this season it had to have been a pretty tough reset for Ralford after what happened in Tokyo. He throws 72 in Ramona. He wins a Diamond League in Brussels. He wins an NCAA title. And then he gets to Worlds. A lot of eyes on him. And he doesn't make it out of the qualifying round. It has probably one of the worst days he's had in the last, 3 years. So that can't be the easiest thing to just bounce back quickly from. And so, like, I don't think it's like last year, I think he opened his season throwing 69 meters at Texas Relays. And so I don't think it's a bad thing that hasn't thrown 69 meters yet this year. I think it's understandable, he's taking some time to kind of ease into the season. And when you're easing into the season, throwing almost 66 meters, that's a pretty good spot to be in. I'm very excited to see Ralford throw this weekend and hopefully talk to him a little bit. But yeah, Ralford is Ralford. And regardless of what Texas has done, I still think I trust Ralford more in the national championship to pull something out and go back to back. And while we're on the topic of Ralford Mullings, something that's pretty incredible this year, 4 of the top 6 men in the NCAA in the men's discus hail from Jamaica. Ralford Mullings, Shamar Reed out of FSU, Rakeel Broderick out of USC, and Alabama's Trevor Gunzell all come from Jamaica. And Jamaica, like, genuinely might be the deepest men's discus nation in the world right now. Like, those 4 guys are all almost, I think, Rakeel, Shamar, and Ralford are all over 63 meters this year. I think Trevor has thrown like 62.70 or something. And then you've also got Roger Stona back in the mix now. And you've got the pros like Chad Wright and Travis Michael and Frederick Dakers. Like, Jamaican teams and national championships are just so tough to make. And those championship meets are going to be so exciting now for the next couple of years. I mean, these guys are young and they're dominating the NCAA. So it's, we've seen the talent and the reign of terror. Reign of terror might be a bad word to phrase it. We've seen the sheer excellence that Jamaica has brought on the track for so many years. And so it's really exciting to see them start to carry that over into the throws a little bit on the men's side. And we could be seeing some pretty exciting stuff in the next couple years. That's all I've got to say about that. And the depth nationally is really strong. It is, I forget what day it is, May 12th. May 12th, we haven't even gotten into the postseason yet. And there's already 14 guys over 60 meters. And only 2 of them, I believe that their only 60-meter mark has come in Ramona. So regardless of that factor, this is still a really strong, really deep year for the NCAA, and I'm very, very excited to see I'm very curious, so I can try and use excited one less time. I'm very curious to see what it'll take to make top 8 at nationals, because that's like a pretty good high water. I think it was like 62 mid last year. Like, last year was pretty crazy, and this year is nearly as good. I wish Mikolas Alekna was throwing. I'm surprised it took me, over an hour into this video to name drop the king himself, our injured prince. Yeah, if Mikolas was in the mix this season, that would just make everything even more exciting. But regardless, even without the world record holder, the depth is incredible, and nationals and even some of the conference meets are going to be so much fun. On the women's side, Alita Van Dalen is back. Uh-oh. So the story with Alita is she competed unattached in Ramona, threw over 69 meters. She was slated to throw unattached at the Tom Jones Memorial, which is UF's home meet, the week after that. Seemed like she was heading towards a redshirt year. And then at the East Coast Relays in Jacksonville a week and a half ago, she's back on the start list. She's back in a UF kit. And she goes 63.97 to beat her training partner for like half the year, Lagitasaga Collins, and establish a new NCAA lead by almost 2 meters. And actually, I just saw this morning that her 69-meter throw from Ramona has now been ratified as a mark for UF. So it's the new UF school record, and it's the 3rd best mark in collegiate history now, behind her countrywoman, her good friend Yorinda Van Klinken's collegiate record, and as well as Jaden Ulrich from Louisville and her 69.39 from Ramona last April. So obviously, for me personally, Alita being back is just brings so much light to my life. But I mean, she has been one of the absolute best throwers in collegiate history in the women's disc and has just been so consistent every year. National runner-up last year to Sierra Jackson's huge PB. And so this year, like, it seems like there's definitely a very clear path there for Alita to finally win her national title. And, you know, I mentioned this when I was doing the recap show from Ramona a few weeks ago that, like, her PB before she threw 69 was, I think, 66.31, which she had thrown in Ramona. But a few weeks after she threw that in Ramona, or like a few months after, that summer of 2024, she threw almost 66 meters in a stadium at the Paris Diamond League. So Ramona obviously helps her, but it's historically proven that that's not too far off of what she's capable of in more regulated conditions. And so if Alita's now throwing 69 meters in Ramona, what's she going to do the next month at SECs and regionals and nationals? So I'm excited. Alita, if you're watching this, I'm excited to see what you do. If anyone's going to be the stiffest competition for Alita, Alabama's Joyce Oguama is second in the NCAA right now at 62 meters 13. She's been over 60 meters, almost over 61 meters in three of her competitions this year. And so she's, you know, that consistency is something that we like to see, because if Alita has an off day, which seems unlikely, but that's what you need to be able to take advantage of that when the people who are ahead of you have off days. And the SEC championships in women's discus, more than almost any other event, it's really going to be a national championship preview, because 5 of the top 6 women in the country hail from the SEC and will be converging in Auburn this weekend, and 7 of the top 10 come out of the SEC. So I'm going to be blessed with watching some incredible throwing over the weekend. I believe discus is on Saturday. So that'll be a fun one to keep an eye on. And then one of the other women in the top 10 in the country, Anthonett Nabwe, who we'll talk about at length in a little bit. Anthonett threw her PB of 59.58 a few weeks ago. She's currently 7th in the NCAA. In the shot put, she's 11th with a mark of 17.49, which is just off her PB from a few years ago. And let's see, what do I have notes for next? Okay, I've got javelin notes next, so we'll come back to Anthonett. Instead of Anthonett Nabwe, the pride of Liberia, we'll pick up javelin talking about Chinacheram Prosper Nnamdi, the pride of Nigeria. Chinacheram, who has transferred from Baylor down to Texas A&M this offseason, he went 84.68 at the Tom Jones Memorial a few weeks ago. And then I think just a week after, it might have been 2 weeks after, he goes 83.31. That 84-meter mark is the 4th best in NCAA history, just ahead of what Jordan Davis was able to manage in 2024. And I talked to Chinacheram after that comp. There's few interviews where I finish it and I'm kind of just like, that was a fascinating interview. Not few. There's a decent amount of them, but this one was really one where I was like, wow. And it was very much giving me Tarek vibes, because he threw a 2-meter PB, NCAA lead, like I said, 4th best in NCAA history. And I'm like, how are you feeling, man? Like, you threw almost 85 meters. Like, that's incredible. And he goes, it's all right. I should have thrown 90. And I'm like, this is a guy that coming into the day had never thrown 83 meters before. And he's just like, 90 meters it's like 90 meters or bust. So I don't even want to know how mad he was when he only threw 83.31 a few weeks ago. Like, he must have, I don't know. He must have been very upset with himself there. But I doubt that confidence in himself to throw 90 meters is completely unfounded. So that makes me very curious to see what he'll do this weekend at SECs. and then at nationals next month. Because for the sake of it being really cool and for the sake of seeing the first collegiate man to ever throw 90 meters, I'm going to believe him. And I'm going to assume that he should have thrown 90 meters a few weeks ago at Tom Jones. And I'm going to assume he does throw 90 meters this weekend. So, Chinacharam, I trust you. And regardless, you're putting out some really cool, really big marks. So you should be happy with that. Keyshawn Strawn is also putting out some really big marks. 81-86 for Nebraska. His best mark since he opened his collegiate career, throwing 84-27 back in 2023 at Texas Relays, which is one of the best marks in NCAA history. And Keyshawn had a really good season last year. He had a solid season in 2024, but hasn't quite reached those massive heights that he saw in 2023, and then his season was cut short due to injury. And so if this 81-86 from a few weeks ago is a step in that right direction, that duel between him and Chinacharam and another man over 84 meters, Georgia's Jordan Davis, who took 2025 off, but in 2024, D2 GOAT at Southern Connecticut State throwing 84 meters. He's thrown 80-38 and 80-31. So he's one of the only two men with Chinacharam over 80 meters multiple times this year in the NCAA. And so there's three guys that, assuming all things go well, three guys that are going to be going to nationals having thrown 84 meters in their collegiate careers. I assume that's the first time that has ever been the case going into national championships. And that makes me very excited for what this national championships could bring. I'm sorry for saying excited again. I'm sorry to whoever's liver is playing along with this game. A last note on the men's javelin. The GOAT himself, just kidding, he's not the GOAT, because I'm a kind of unfounded MJ supporter. I don't want to get into any arguments, but LeBron James of New Mexico Junior College. The big LeBron may have lost last night and gotten swept in the second round of the NBA playoffs, but LeBron James, the javelin thrower, the better LeBron, he's thrown 75-04 this season, which is encroaching on the JUCO national record, which sits, I believe, just over 76 meters. So he's getting close to there, and he's top 10, I think, in the entire, in all collegiate throwers in the country. So another guy like we saw Jordan Davis in 2024, division doesn't matter. You can throw far and have a pretty sick name regardless of where you are, even if you're at New Mexico JC. So congratulations, LeBron. Women's javelin has sort of been the Evie Bliss show. The U.S. champion from last year who really had that breakout at the World University Games over the summer and then won a U.S. title and then got herself into the World Championships. She's elevated again this year, 61-34 a few weeks ago for her, which is ninth in NCAA history. She's also gotten 59-95 and 59-35. So she has the three best marks in the country and is just really, really good. Michaela Vander West Heisen of Rice sits NCAA number 2 right now at 59.07. She's someone who threw 60 meters last year. And then the national champion from last year, Valentina Barrios Bornicelli out of Missouri, she's only 9th in the NCAA at this point in the season with a season's best of 55.89. But SECs last year was really where Valentina kind of picked up a ton of momentum. I think she threw a PB at SECs and then got into nationals. And the nationals, she threw 62 meters, a 3.5 meter, absolutely massive PB to win a national title. So I'm not putting a ton of stock into what she's done this year. Almost 56 meters is good. Gets a regional mark. That's all she needs to do. This weekend is really where the season kind of starts for the reigning champ. So I will be keeping a very close eye on where Valentina lands this season and who ends up taking Leanna Davidson's spot. The 3-time SEC champion is no longer there to defend her title. So it's an open top of the podium for the first time in a while. Into the Hammer now, which has been by far the best event in the NCAA this year, just like it's been the best event in the world so far this outdoor season. Let me read you some numbers. 77-64, 75-72, 72-48, 71-22. Those are all marks that the one and only Anthonett Nabwe out of Minnesota has thrown this year. 77.64 is just 3 centimeters off Cameron Rogers' collegiate record. And I mean, Cam felt like those records felt like they were never going to get broken. I mean, she was in college basically throwing a mark that won her a world title in 2023. And then here comes Anthonett Nabwe going in one season from 69.85 up to 77.64 in April. So she's still got a lot of time left. There's so much of the season left, and she's almost throwing 78 meters. And like I said, she's also NCAA number 7 in the discus. She's also NCAA number 11 in the shot. And she successfully exercised her postseason demons indoors, winning the weight throw national title. And it just feels like every meet she's just showing you something new that just absolutely makes your jaw drop. And like Big Tens is going to be a tough competition. Her toughest competitor is going to be her teammate Hadley Street, who threw 71.98 at the Tom Jones Memorial a few weeks ago, which is one of the 15 best marks in collegiate history, or makes her one of the 15 best women in collegiate history, I should say. And Hadley was throwing 65.65 last year. So Peter Miller, I salute you. 7-meter improvements out of both of his women's javelin, or 2 of his women's hammer throwers. And they're now in the upper echelon of NCAA throwers all time. And I believe with what I talked with Coach Miller about when he was here in Gainesville for Tom Jones, is neither one of them had ever picked up a hammer before they got to campus, I think. And so you look at their TFers, and Hadley is throwing 51 meters as a freshman. And I forget what Anthonett was throwing, but I tell you what, it was nowhere near 77. And so it's, we've seen what he was able to do with Costa Zaltos and Anulos Montserranis, and Anthony Barnes have been having really strong seasons. And it's just, Peter Miller, you deserve all the respect in the world. What an absolute guy. Texas State's Elizabeth Runer's daughter redshirted the 2025 season, the reigning national champion from 2024, and she is making a really strong case this year that, yes, Anthonett is going to get what she gets. She's going to go insane. She's going to throw really far. But the national title is not going to be an easy thing to win, because Elizabeth has gone 72.89, 71.41, and 70.96, and hasn't really had a bad comp in there. She's been competing relatively frequently. And so it's the same thing that I was kind of talking about with Joyce and Alita with that dynamic in the women's discus, is yes, the marks dictate that Anthonett is a clear favorite, but the consistency from the number 2, whether it be Joyce or Elizabeth, is what you need to see to be okay, a bad day, they have what it takes to have that good day and take advantage of that from either Anthonett or Alita, if that comes to fruition. So Elizabeth is doing literally everything that she can. She can't control the fact that Anthonett is putting together the second best season in NCAA history right now. And we'll see if she can eclipse Cameron Rogers. And Antonett's a junior. She's 3 centimeters off of Cameron Rogers' collegiate record, and she still has a full season left in the NCAA. Scary hours up in Minnesota. That is, for women's hammer, there's 6 women over 69 meters this year. Marie Rougetette out of Mississippi State, Callie Terza out of Kennesaw State, and Kaisa Borman out of Colorado State are all also over that very nice barrier. So a strong year in a lot of ways for women's hammer in the NCAA. Now the men. Texas Tanner at Long Beach, 78.87. Number 2 in NCAA history. He's number 2 in NCAA history in the discus and the hammer throw. That's absolutely absurd. Ryan Johnson, the second best weight thrower in world history. As we saw this indoor season, he's shown equal aplomb in the men's hammer, 77-64, a massive PB for him. He's also thrown 75, and I think maybe he threw 76 too. And then Tarek Robinson O'Hagan, 77-62. He opened his season with that. Hasn't quite matched that level in recent competitions, but like I said, the same thing in the shot put. The postseason is really where Tarek comes to life, so I'm excited to see what he does in Auburn over the weekend. And, I mean, you've got three guys well over 77 meters. You've got Anulos Monseranis kind of sitting in the background. He threw 75-11 a week and a half ago, the national runner-up last year, who threw over 78 meters in the spring of 2025. Travis Martin from Cal Poly has been having an incredible season. 75-62 is his PB now. But when you think about Cal Poly, remember what we saw from Rory Devaney last year, where he threw a 4-meter PB in the national championship and finished, I think, in the top 5 of one of the best competitions we've ever seen. Like, Cal Poly knows how to get their throwers right for championship season. So if the guy's already throwing 75, almost 76 meters, who knows what we could be in store for by the time we return to Eugene. So in so many ways, Hammer has been absolutely blowing my mind this year. And it's so cool. I love it. And I love the throws. So now we have reached the point of enough recapping. Now let's talk about previewing the Shanghai Diamond League. Women's shot put, the field is Maggie Ewan, Chase Jackson, Sarah Mitten, Yemi Ogunleye, Fani Roos, Jada Ross, Jessica Schilder, Songju Yan, Danielle Thomas Dodd, and Zhang Lin Ru. Like I said, that is a world championship Olympic final field. We are basically just missing Madison Lee Weshie. And aside from that, it is that global championship final field. So and Axelina Johansson, I guess. I shouldn't disrespect the world indoor bronze medalist like that. I'm sorry, Axelina. But this field, insane. Men's discus, almost as insane. Martina Selekna, Christian Che, Maddie Denny, Mario Alberto Diaz, Sam Mattis, Lawrence Okoye, Stephen Richter, Alex Rose, Daniel Stahl, Roger Stona. First of all, Alex Rose in a Diamond League is something you always love to see. Big claps for him. This one's going to be special. I'm very curious to see what Maddie and Christian do, because they really, I don't think they got out of Ramona what they wanted. I mean, we know Maddie didn't. Like, he went there for the world record, and he came up well over a meter short of, not well over a meter. No, he threw 74 on Thursday. What am I talking about? He came up almost a meter short of what he managed last year, though. And Christian Che was there for like 3 weeks and PB'd by like 30 centimeters. Those guys are both proven competitors, proven to throw really well in a stadium setting. So now that they're back on this kind of stage, I'm curious to see what they'll be able to pull out, as well as the man himself, the world champion, Daniel Stahl. Let's get this guy back in some big boy comps. I still wish he would have been in Ramona, but alas, what can you do? Let's just enjoy the start of this Diamond League season. I'm so excited to have the Diamond League back. It's a flawed thing, obviously. It has its issues. It unfortunately probably always will. But it's the best we've got for now. And it's really fun. And it brings together some good folks for some good comps. So I'm pumped for this weekend. Like I said, that will be Saturday morning in the U.S. We'll be seeing those competitions go down in Shanghai. And ladies and gentlemen, at long last, the notebook is down, and that is all I have for you guys. It feels good to be back. I don't think, if I can get back into the flow of doing this every week, we won't have hour-and-a-half long episodes. Maybe they'll just be back to like 45 minutes like they were last summer. But yeah, apologies for the distance between uploads. Like I said, it was a very busy couple of weeks, but graduated now. Not necessarily going to be less busy, because Audrey and I are traveling a whole heck of a lot this summer, which is exciting. But we were doing that last year too, and I managed to do one of these pretty much every week. So hopefully with meet starting to really ramp up, we'll get into that. We'll get into more interviews coming on the pod feed as well, because I really enjoy doing those, and I hope people got a lot out of them, and always relish the chance to talk to some throwers like that. So yeah, I'm excited for this summer. It's gonna be a good one, even though we don't have a normal world championships for 5 out of 8 throwing events, which sucks, but F it, we ball. That does it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're listening on the podcast. Please rate and review I don't know if you can review on Spotify, but please rate and review wherever you can on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Follow Paulie Throws on Instagram and keep up in the YouTube Shorts tab here on the Paulie Throws YouTube channel to keep up to date with the Paulie Throws fact of the day, the absolute groundbreaking innovation that is taking the world by storm. Obviously, that is some self-aggrandizing hyperbole, but it's a lot of fun on days where I get it done before 11 p.m. And yeah, I think that's P. Off Mahoney on Twitter. Also got to add that in. But that is all that I've got for you. So again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.